Sunday, the 14th of April, is not an ordinary day. Sunday, the 14th of April, is a mystical day. It is a day on which the spiritual forces of the universe are aligned in such a way as to bring about an expression of people power. I say this because in our Barbadian history, the greatest day of people power in our history was Sunday, the 14th of April, 1816, when the enslaved masses of Barbados rose up, came out of the plantations, and rose up in a rebellion against slavery that ultimately brought about the destruction of the slavery system. I say this also because on Sunday, the 14th of April, 2002, the courageous people of Venezuela rose up and descended from the barrios and favelas of Caracas, surrounded the presidential palace in Venezuela, in Caracas, and demanded the reinstallment of their president, the great Hugo Chavez, the man who had started the Bolivarian Revolution. And so there's something mystical about Sunday, the 14th of April. And therefore, I expect that this Sunday, the 14th of April, on that mystical day, once again, the masses of people will express people power in such an overwhelming show of force that Nicolas Maduro, the successor and spiritual heir of Hugo Chavez, will be elected to power in Venezuela with a resounding mandate, a mandate that will mean something positive not only for the people of Venezuela, but for the people of the entire subcontinent of Latin America and the Caribbean. Thank you very much.
But we have seen a radical transformation in the actual health policy as a result of Chavez's policies in Venezuela. Venezuela went into a joint arrangement with Cuba, and the quality of life of the people were transformed in a meaningful way. We have seen the proliferation of knowledge and education across Latin America, influenced by Venezuela, influenced by Cuba as well, but we have seen it in Venezuela, where many persons who were not fortunate to have access to the highest levels of education got access to that education because of the thinking of Hugo Chavez.
Testing, 1, 2, 1.
I am of the view that that program, that political trajectory is on its way, and it must continue.
Testing, 1.
We have to give unequivocal support
1, 2.
to the new future president, Nicolas Maduro, because it is as a result of his experiences working along with Chavez and identifying with that kind of policy that we can place our confidence in him in continuing this journey. I also strongly believe that these men shared a number of commonalities because of their working class origins. And they don't speak on these issues because they were taught in school Marxism or any kind of radical politics. It's a life experience that they live. Oppression, hardship, life struggling from the bottom. David made mention to you just now that the strength sometimes has to come from the bottom, ordinary people. This is a bus driver with a lifelong experience. He can empathize with the struggles of the ordinary people. He also understands the value of those people who have moved socially, vertically up the ladder, but also had working class origins. And although today they might be of middle class, they were initially working class people, because we had to bring them from the bottom. The majority of the people today, as it was always in Latin America, are from the grassroots level. And we feel that we would be betraying a trust of all of those entities that we spoke about, who sacrificed their lives over centuries to make life what it is today in the Western world, if we do not join in solidarity with the Venezuelan people and ensure that that kind of philosophical thought, those kinds of programs which we have witnessed in Venezuela, the extending of Caribbean people to the people of Venezuela and Latin America, and the extension as well of Latin America people as a form of reciprocity back to the Caribbean. Hugo Chavez placed policies in place to make life easier for us through Petro-Caribbean. He has done it through the ALBA. He has done it through ASA as well. And today, we believe that we cannot do anything less if we are not to betray the trust that has been placed in us as a result of our foreparents, our brothers and sisters who sacrificed their lives in Venezuela and in Haiti and across Latin America and the Caribbean, if we did not come here today and give our support infinitely to the potential, the man who has the potential, the man who is likely to be the president, as long as we are clear in what is required to take us forward. And we are here to give our support as well to Nicolas Maduro in the exercise of going forward to be the president of Venezuela. We want to thank you for coming here this morning and giving us an opportunity so we can express these views. These views sometimes are not as common as they ought to be. And believe me, people who contribute to the future of mankind, sometimes they are a little unorthodox in the approach that they make to human development. I don't want you to at least ignore the things that we have said. We want you also to join with us in carrying forward this advocacy for justice and freedom of the people of Latin America and Venezuela in particular. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brother Trevor Prescott, for your presentation. I would now like to invite our Pan-Africanist brother and brother from the African Liberation Movement, Brother John Howell, to address you.
I would like to join my Pan-African family today in supporting the president of Venezuela as he faces the polls on the 14th of this month. I would like to support everything that has been said so far, and I would like to add to that by saying, anytime you find an oppressed people, you would find the people fighting against oppression. You would have heard my brother Trevor talking about the Haitian Revolution. You would have heard Brother David Comachon talking about 1816 rebellion in Barbados, that is popularly known as the Bussa Rebellion that took place in Barbados. And you would hear of several different revolts throughout the Caribbean and in Latin America. So it is one struggle. It is not separate. Our people were brought here from the African continent and enslaved throughout Latin America, throughout the Caribbean, throughout the Americas. The people in Latin America were colonized by these same people. And so it is one struggle and one fight. Our ancestor, our esteemed teacher, Dr. John Henry Clark, he said to us on more than one occasion, and on occasions such as this, he said to us, you bury the man and continue with the plan. And so we support our brother. We supported our brother Chavez in the revolution that he fought against the imperial powers to bring Venezuela from a decadent society and raise the standard of living for the underprivileged and the poor within Venezuela. And not only did he do that, he also looked out for the neighboring countries and offered them solutions to the poverty that existed within those countries. And many countries benefited. And you would have heard about Alba before. You would have heard about Petrocaribe. And so we support the Venezuelan people because we have suffered the same oppression. And we are emerging from this oppression. And so on the death of our brother, Hugo Chavez, who has now gone on to the ancestral realm, you saw the pomp and the ceremony with which he went on with, that is deserving of a man who has done so much, a man of that stature. And so it is now time to continue the plan. It is now time to continue the plan of Simon Bolivar. It is now time to continue the plan of Hugo Chavez. It is now time for the Venezuelan people once again to show their resilience. I believe David Comishaw mentioned when Chavez was ousted from power, the Venezuelan people say enough is enough. And so one more time, the Venezuelan people, we are asking the Venezuelan people to show their resilience. We're asking them to go to the polls. We're asking them to continue the plan of Simon Bolivar. We're asking them to continue the plan of Hugo Chavez. We're asking them to go to the polls in their numbers. We know that the enemy is lurking for any mistake or any opening, that they could do whatever is necessary in their interest. But we're asking the people of Venezuela to be vigilant. Do not be fooled. Go to the polls and let us support our brother Maduro, who will, I believe, be the next president of Venezuela. I want to thank you.
Thank you, Brother John Howell, for your presentation. On behalf of the Caribbean Movement for Peace and Integration, I would also like to bring a short message. My message is centered around recognizing the Bolivarian Revolution in Venezuela, recognizing the contribution of the Venezuelan people in the liberation struggles within the Americas, recognizing the battle against forces whose interest is only in a small group within the Americas, and recognizing a battle for youth, students, women, indigenous people, African people, and the people of the Americas, the poor people of the Americas. Today, we no longer have President Hugo Chavez, one of the leaders of that Bolivarian process. But today, we have the ideas of President Hugo Chavez and the ideas of many progressive persons from the Americas who demonstrated their commitment to the liberation, the freedom, and the rights of the working class movement within the Americas. Chavez fought a battle to the extent that there was a coup d'etat in Venezuela and he was arrested, and the people of Venezuela demanded his release, and the people of the Americas demanded his release because there were protest action all across Latin America, the Caribbean, and the solidarity movement outside of the Americas with the people of Venezuela and with President Hugo Chavez. And they all demand the release of President Hugo Chavez. And he and his government was able to continue the process that have benefited the poor and the powerless within the Americas. But on Sunday, we are asked to continue that revolutionary process. And the only way we can do that would be to stand in solidarity and to elect one of the key leaders of that Bolivarian process. And one of the key leaders of that Bolivarian process is known to the labor movement as a leader within the trade union movement. Brother Prescott mentioned that he comes from the working class movement as a bus driver. But he's also a trade union leader, a man who is prepared to defend the worker, the student, the youth, women in the society, especially those among the poor and the powerless, and to create the conditions for progressive forces in this region to be able to move towards the creation of a strong Bolivarian movement within the Americas. So that this election on Sunday, the 14th, is not only an election for the Venezuelan people, but is also an election for the poor and the powerless people within the Americas. And that is what this election is all about. This election is an election that have created the conditions for a very strong battle against those reactionary forces in the United States of America that are today funding newspapers in Venezuela to criticize the government of Venezuela, that are putting up large sums of money through the private sector in Venezuela to create the conditions to frustrate the working classes in Venezuela. But the working classes in Venezuela are on the road. The working classes in Venezuela are on the road to a victory that will create the conditions for the United Socialist Party of Venezuela, and a victory for the peoples of the Americas, the poor people of the Americas. So that on behalf of the Caribbean Movement for Peace and Integration, I want to send my solidarity. I want to offer my support. And I want to join with the Venezuelan worker and working class movement to create the conditions for the president of Venezuela to become a successful man in this election, and for the people of Venezuela to celebrate a victory that represents the poor and the powerless people within the Americas. So, comrades, I want to say, long live the Bolivarian movement in Venezuela. Long live the process that's taking place throughout the Americas.
Long live.
Forward ever, backward ever.